So let's talk about being angry. On Sunday, Bobby launched us into a new series called How to Be Angry, where we're talking about anger as an emotion, where it comes from, how it builds inside of us, and how we process that and channel it well to transform it into something that's redemptive on the other side. But as I've been thinking about this and listening to Bobby, what I've realized is I'm not sure I've really worked out my relationship to anger in the world. The truth is, I'm a white, straight, cisgendered, middle-class male. There's really not a lot for me to be angry about. I have resources at my disposal. People take me seriously. They listen to what I have to say. And what do I have to be angry about? Of course, I do get angry. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, and so I like to make decisions with my gut. I like to feel that kind of rage and purpose inside of me. I like to grab a hold of causes and champion them for other people when I don't have my own. It's part of who I am. But of course, that's not the only times I get angry. I get frustrated, I get upset, I like getting my way. One of the things that I recognize in myself is that when I go to the grocery store, and I don't get to the cashier right away within 2 or 3 minutes, I get really upset about that. I just want to leave all of my groceries on the floor and walk out. And of course, that's silly, it's immature, it's ridiculous, but I know that I feel those things. So how do I process anger in ways that are healthy for me? How do I recognize that a lot of what feels like anger is really just me not experiencing the kind of privilege that I'm used to? Things are not accommodating to me, and I get angry about that. But we had this really interesting conversation on Tuesday on the after party, Bobby and I. I'm beginning to recognize that my experiences of anger, from my position in society, my place as Jeremy Duncan, is not necessarily where everyone else comes from. My experience of anger that bubbles up in frustration when I don't get what I want is not the same as Bobby's experience of anger. As a woman who has been pushed to the sidelines in a role like ministry, not given the space to fully express her giftings. It's not even remotely the same as an Indigenous person in Canada who has lived through, who has survived the residential school system here in Canada. Incredible injustice. It's not my place to just say, oh, forget it, move on, forgive. This anger isn't healthy for you. Because every single one of us come to our anger from a different place. Now, the Bible tells us in James in the New Testament that our anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. And that's absolutely true. Anger on its own will never produce justice and righteousness. But processed anger, felt anger, anger that is transformed into something on the other side can. And this is really what's fascinating about anger. Because my anger that comes from a place of privilege, when I don't get what I'm used to getting, that, when it's honored, when it's understood, when it's allowed to speak back to me, can say something important to me. It can teach me about my place in society. It can teach me about the ways that anger bubbles up when I don't get what I'm used to, and how actually what that's saying to me is that I need to learn how to give my place away, to hand my privilege to others, to share my platform with those who are not used to being listened to so that their story can be shared as well. Even that anger can say something important. But for others, their anger can speak to real injustice in the world. It can motivate them. It can give them their challenge so that they go out and they ensure that no one else has to experience what they have. For some of you, your anger is about seeing an injustice that no one else notices, and this becomes your cause. That you work to ensure that that injustice doesn't stay that way, that the world changes, that your words are healing, your actions are true, that you do everything you can to make the world a more just, more Christ-like environment for everyone. Anger is this incredibly important emotion, but it always has to be honored, understood, processed, and turned into something else. Even if your anger, like mine, is often immature, that's telling you something about the world. If your anger comes from a place of injustice that you've experienced, it's telling you something about what needs to change in the world. If you see something in the world that needs to be different, that does not reflect the goodness and the graciousness of God, that anger is calling you, it's motivating you, it's moving you to make change in the people around you. But that anger needs to be turned into something on the other side. Healing words, positive action, work for justice, whatever it is, this is the righteousness that God desires in us, and it only comes when we allow ourselves to feel what we feel, to process it, to think about it, to hear what it is that the Spirit is saying to us through those emotions. And so if you come from the side of the spectrum like me, where you know that your anger is often not a healthy feeling for you, it speaks to something that you want to learn how to give away. That is the Spirit speaking to you. If your anger comes from injustice you've experienced, injustice that you see that others don't seem to recognize, understand this as a gift of the Spirit of God, speaking to you about where the kingdom of God can be brought forward in small moments of grace and justice in your words and your actions this week. May the Spirit of God speak to you even in your anger, and as you process it, may it turn into something good, graceful, beautiful, and loving on the other side this week.